You'll be shocked by Melania Trump and Jill Biden's covert altercation at the inauguration. The National Mall is illuminated by the bright morning light, which creates a calm but intense ambience at the ceremonial grounds. The date of Donald Trump's inauguration was January 20th, 2025. The flutter of flags, the whispers of eager spectators, and the excitement of a new era in American politics filled the air. However, underneath the festive exterior, a simmering conflict between Melania Trump and Jill Biden, two women at the center of political history, was about to emerge. Jill's personal mission. As she strode through the gathering, Jill Biden's face was a combination of determination and tenderness. She was used to handling sensitive circumstances as First Lady, but today was different. Not only was she speaking on behalf of the government, but she also had come here on a personal mission. Rumors of secrecy, secret agendas, and a possible danger to the integrity of the proceedings were among the whispered talks she'd heard in the days before the inauguration, and parts of those conversations repeated in her memory. The tension between. Melania Trump, impeccable in a fitted blue dress that exuded sophistication and power, stood in front of her, close to a designated security spot off the side of the platform. Her security detail encircled her as a quiet barrier to keep inquisitive bystanders and the media away. Even at a distance, the two women's animosity was evident despite their polite distance. The weight of expectation. The air seemed to thicken as Jill got closer to Melania. Jill could feel the pressure of expectations pressing down on her as the buzz of talk in the throng faded to a faint whisper. She saw Melania coming and sprung to attention. Jill could see a little flash in Melania's eyes, maybe caution or recognition, but her expression was controlled and inscrutable. "Melania," Jill said at the start, her tone calm but urgent. "We'll need to talk about it." Melania regarded her momentarily, slightly narrowing her eyes, betraying her surprise. "Is there a problem, Mrs. Biden?" she said, calmly and kindly. Jill inhaled deeply and said, "I'm worried about something happening behind the scenes today. We're both involved, and I cannot allow it to go unchecked." An orchestra during the inauguration. As the ladies faced each other, tension increased, and the surrounding space seemed to shrink. "What are you talking about? This is a day of celebration, Mrs. Biden. I see no reason for confrontation." Melania inquired calmly but cautiously, and Jill tightened her fists at her sides while carefully selecting her words. A flash of something, shock, maybe, or guilt, crossed Melania's face, but she quickly covered it with a tight smile. "I know what I've heard. There are talks of something illicit being orchestrated during this inauguration, something that puts many lives at risk and could tarnish the integrity of this event. I believe you know these plans, and I need to know what they are. Mrs. Biden, I assure you, my focus is solely on the event. I'm not privy to any such plans." The confrontation. Jill's gaze swept across Melania's face, seeing the faint stress that concealed her calm demeanor. "Can't fool me, Melania. I know you've been given information, maybe even instructions you haven't shared. For the sake of the country and the truth, I need you to open up." Melania flexed her muscles. Jill said, dropping her voice to Melania's level. "There's nothing for me to say, Mrs. Biden. I support my husband and ensure this transition goes smoothly. This isn't just about you or your husband. It's about what's happening behind the scenes, something that threatens all of us. We can't let fear silence us. Tell me what you know." Seeking alliance. Melania paused, looking to the security guards nearby and then back at Jill. She briefly let her tough exterior slip, displaying her fragility. At last she said, I wish I knew more, Jill. I understand your pressures, but together we can uncover the truth." Jill nodded, her face empathetic but determined. "There are things I've been told not to speak about." There was a sense that something significant was happening, a moment that would soon become the talk of the country, and that the press, concealed in the crowds and behind well-placed barriers, exchanged glances with Jill and Melania. If you have even the slightest inkling of what's going on, it could make all the difference. Preventing a disaster. "Melania," Jill started again, "I realize we have very different political backgrounds, but we can avoid a catastrophe if we cooperate." Melania said, "You must realize, Jill, that there are forces at work that would rather keep secrets than bring them to light. I'm not here to fight you, but to ensure we do right by our country." Her eyes glistened with a mixture of concern and deliberation. My spouse and I have always prioritized America's interests, even if sometimes necessitates making tough choices that aren't available for public debate. Requiring transparency. I respect that, Melania, but concealing the truth can have unexpected consequences, Jill said, taking a step closer and dropping her voice even further. We cannot let that go on if such secrets are used to control or hurt individuals. We need transparency. Melania quietly changed her position, her hand moving slightly to the hidden communication device at her wrist. Jill saw this change and knew that time was running out. Melania, Jill said urgently, we need to be cautious if we're going to do this. I understand, Jill, but trust is everything right now, Melania said, nodding, her voice almost inaudible. Some people don't want us talking. We must communicate what we know without giving away too much to avert what's about to happen. Protocols and contingencies. I have reason to believe that orders are coming from very high to take measures that could compromise the ceremony and perhaps even the future of the country. Melania's eyes widened slightly as Jill reached into her bag and took out a slim, leather-bound notebook, flipping through pages full of notes and observations she had secretly gathered over the previous weeks. There are rumors of procedures and contingencies being activated that don't align with transparency, Jill said, looking around the throng to ensure they weren't overheard. Plans exist to change security protocols, misappropriate monies, and control the narrative surrounding this inauguration. If we don't end it, we may be left vulnerable to forces that will stop at nothing to keep power. Disbelief and concern. The first fear gave way to a combination of incredulity and worry as Melania turned to face Jill. I've heard similar rumors, but thought they were just political maneuvering, Melania said. Are you implying that it's accurate that we can take action? Jill smiled faintly, an expression of cautious optimism. I suppose so. Because of your access and my capacity to rouse the truth, we have a chance. However, we must act wisely. Jill gave Melania a little prod. We might not be alone in our suspicions, she muttered. Someone is listening. If we step out of line, our plans could be foiled before they even begin. Exchanged furtive glances. We need to find out who he is and his intentions, but for now, let's continue with what we were saying, Melania said, nodding and squinting as she watched the man's motions. The well-dressed man watching them started to approach, attracting their cautious attention. Jill gave Melania a subtle signal, and both women assumed a more circumspect stance. If he intervenes, we'll adapt. Jill and Melania exchanged sly looks, their uneasy alliance growing as they struggled with the enormity of their discovery. Murmurs of the inauguration swirled around them. Still, time seemed to slow down in their secluded corner. Thomas Reed. Both women reacted angrily to the interruption, but Jill's diplomatic instincts overcame them. "Excuse me, Mrs. Biden, Mrs. Trump," he said, courteous but questioning. "I couldn't help but notice your discussion. Perhaps I can be of assistance." Jill thought carefully before asking, "And who might you be?" The guy gave a little grin. "My name is Thomas Reed. I work for an independent media organization that monitors events like these. I believe you're discussing matters that could be of public interest. I might have information that could corroborate what you've heard." "Let's hear what you know." Melania and Jill shared a look conveying curiosity and suspicion without words. Reed nodded, anticipating Jill's next question. "And why should we trust you, Mr. Reed? We don't know who you work for or your true intentions." After a moment of hesitation, Jill turned to Melania and said, "Fair point. I ask that you allow me to share what I've learned. If it aligns with your suspicions, perhaps we can work together to uncover the truth without compromising your security." Both understood their hesitant participation required wider backing to confront the forces driving today's secrets. Jill responded, "All right, Mr. Reed, at last, let's hear what you know." The larger conspiracy. Reed's face took on a serious look. "I've been tracking unusual communications and financial transactions leading up to this inauguration. There are whispers of a covert operation involving redirecting federal funds through shell companies tied to several powerful figures. I believe these funds are intended to finance a shadow campaign that could undermine the legitimacy of this administration, along with influence over international markets." Melania's eyebrows furrowed. "So you're saying that not only is there a scandal on the ground here, but it's part of a larger conspiracy?" Documents of proof. "Exactly," said Reed. "And I have documents that confirm transactions and meetups scheduled for the coming days. If you help me ensure this information reaches the public safely, we can blow the lid off this entire operation." Jill looked at her notes and nodded. "This is more than I expected. It aligns with some of the things Melania and I have been discussing. But why would those behind this operation want to keep Jill Biden and Melania Trump from uncovering the truth during the inauguration?" Reed gave a tiny nod. "You know that if someone with your influence were to expose this now, it could derail their plans. They likely planted agents here to steer the conversation away from these issues. Your conversation has already drawn attention." Moving somewhere. All three jumped a little as they heard hurried footsteps from a neighboring hallway. The three of them looked in the direction of the noise. Melania nodded and looked about as Jill whispered, "If we're going to share sensitive information, we need to move somewhere safer." They proceeded stealthily through the crowd of visitors and personnel, carefully avoiding groups of well-dressed people, saying, "There's a secured office behind the podium area. We might find refuge there." Melania was cautious, and she said, "How reliable are these documents, and how did you come across them without drawing attention to yourself earlier?" Verifying the data. Reed hesitated, looked over the information. Jill nodded, looking from Melania to Reed. "They were leaked to me by an insider at one of the banks handling the transactions. I can verify their authenticity. The details within match consistencies I've been tracking for months. This operation threatens our political system and the foundation of our democracy. And if what you're saying is accurate, its tentacles extend far beyond today's inauguration. We must act cautiously but decisively. An exchange is planned for midnight tonight, immediately following the event. Evidence will be transferred and another shipment will depart, allegedly going to an undisclosed location if we don't intercept it." Intercepting and alerting. Interception could mean a lot of things, Jill thought quickly. Melania bent over the laptop and studied the paper, saying, "If we alert the authorities now with this evidence, would they act? We'd need to coordinate with someone with access to the location where this transfer is supposed to happen, but the clock is ticking. Security and careful coordination are crucial because we're dealing with powerful individuals who may have infiltrated even our trusted agencies," Reed groaned. "Conventional channels may be jeopardized. We must use several strategies to deliver this material to the appropriate parties: international organizations, independent watchdogs, and investigative journalists. We need to think creatively." Supposed to be a day of celebration. I never expected to be having a conversation like this on what should be a day of celebration. But circumstances have changed, Jill said, looking at Melania with determination and concern. Melania nodded slowly and said, "I agree. We have to expose this conspiracy no matter what it takes. I've seen the manipulation of truth by those in positions of power. We've discovered something today that jeopardizes not only reputations, but also the fundamental tenets of our democracy. The strategy is as follows. We collect additional tangible proof from Reed's paperwork, distribute it to a trusted network we've developed over the years, and then subtly notify people who can take action without revealing the conspirators. We mustn't let that happen." Jill inhaled sharply. Encrypting the channel. "I'm in," Reed said, looking up at Jill and Melania with a cautiously hopeful face. "We have to hurry. I can begin sending some of this data over encrypted channels to a select group of contacts in government oversight committees and investigative media renowned for their honesty." "How many of them are there?" Melania's eyes darted around the secure vault, her mind racing as they worked in the dim light. "We need to be cautious," she muttered, the weight of their situation pressing heavily on her shoulders. "Probably a couple of security guards or agents," Jill replied in a low but urgent voice. "We can't afford to be discovered," Reed whispered urgently. Exposing everything. With a determined expression, Jill answered, "Agreed," but we couldn't wait indefinitely. After completing his message dispatched to his connections, Reed turned to face them and said, "The evidence is being sent out. We must disrupt the midnight exchange and make sure everything is exposed." Melania strolled silently, contemplating the seriousness of their predicament, saying, "We're working against the clock, and we're being hunted. We've got some allies already on the move, but it'll take time to filter through the right channels. We won't have another opportunity if they learn about us again." In this together. "But we're in this together," Jill continued steadily. "But we can't back down now. We're not just fighting for ourselves," Reed added, looking to Melania and Jill, both of them nodding, their features stern. "If we succeed, we change everything." Jill gave a little grin, but her face was tense. Then let's make sure we don't fail. Melania leaned in her voice, almost a whisper, as the evening became darker and the inaugural celebrations went on outside. No more playing it safe. We take the initiative from here. We reveal them. Checking the encrypted message. We'll do it together, Jill said in a steady, determined voice as the heavy vault door closed behind them. Their last line of defense between the outside world and the storm they were about to unleash. Time was running out, and the fight to protect the truth had just begun. Hold here, she whispered, crouching behind a stack of crates. She checked the encrypted message from Falcon once more. Agents present. You can't use the back entrance. Her eyes narrowed. Agents? That only made her suspicious about the operation they were attempting to expose. Ever the tech expert, Reed squatted next to her and accessed his device, saying, I can disable the cameras at the entrance, but it'll only be for a few minutes. Once I do, we'll need to move quickly. He added in a steady, quiet voice. And Jill nodded, her thoughts racing through potential outcomes. Preparing for anything. We must be prepared for anything, Melania said, peering at the warehouse's pitch-black interior. Without hesitation, we behave as if we belong once we're inside. Stay vigilant. Reed's fingers flew over his phone, and a few moments later, the faint whir of cameras deactivated, filling the air. Done. Melania nodded, and Reed swiftly took out his phone again, looking for the new security threats. Let's go, he said, gesturing to the door. We've got to get to that shipping area. Jill whispered, pointing toward a door at the far end of the warehouse. I'll track their comms, he said. Just keep going. Jill said hurriedly as her heartbeat increased. We don't have much time. Stay quiet and focused. Melania stepped forward, her face hardening, and said, We go in on 3. Melania murmured, 1, 2, 3. And Reed whispered, There's the exchange. Reed looked at them, eyes sweeping the room, and said, Ready. Melania took a deep breath, her instincts taking over, and she said, We move in and we take control of the situation. We need to act now before they make the transfer. No errors. Without another word, Melania stepped out from behind the crate, moving swiftly toward the group. Jill and Reed followed closely, their steps synchronized. As they got closer, Melania's voice rang out with authority. Stop right now, she gave the order. This ends now. Reed's phone, vibrating quietly in his pocket, broke the tense atmosphere as the agents paused, their eyes darting to her in astonishment. Who are you? I'm going to make sure you don't get away with this, Melania said in a calm, collected voice. Now step away from the crate. The agent paused, assessing Melania, but Jill stepped forward with a stern expression. We have all the evidence we need. One of the men demanded, reaching for the weapon. This is over. The narrow escape. The silence was broken abruptly when one of the agents lunged toward a nearby control panel, presumably to set off an alarm. Reed moved quickly, sending a signal to turn off the system. No time to waste, he muttered. Melania moved quickly, stepping forward and knocking the agent's hand away. I don't think so, she said firmly, her experience with tense confrontations giving her the upper hand. Jill took the evidence and put it in her briefcase, and while the agents were momentarily distracted, she said, Let's get out of here, in a low but urgent voice. Moving stealthily. There's a door on the far side that's a little open, Melania muttered. We can take them down softly with a few non-lethal takedowns, then slip by. Melania touched Jill and whispered, That's our best entrance point. Reed shook his head slightly, saying it was too hazardous. We reveal our identity if they warn someone. With her pulse racing, Jill agreed and said, Let's follow them. We need to move stealthily around them. The guys walked to a massive loading area where several containers were placed on a pallet jack, and they stayed in the shadows, hoping to get additional information. The exchange point. This must be the exchange point, Reed muttered. Before the transfer's finished, we want to intercept the crates and secure the evidence. Bewildered by his colleague's abrupt disappearance, the guard hesitantly approached the commotion. But Melania moved quickly to drag the subdued guard into a dark corner, carefully binding him. Reed whispered from his concealed position behind a column. 2 down, Jill texted Reed, gasping for air. 1 still active, but he's distracted by the noise. Reed responded, almost away, saying, I'll disable the connection for the pallet jack. When it stops, you can move the crate. Safe route. That guy won't be calling for backup. With the crate now secured, they moved quickly, knowing every second counted. The exchange was falling apart in front of the conspirators' eyes, and it was only a matter of time before the whole truth would be exposed. "That guy won't be calling for backup," Reed said with a slight smile, feeling the weight of their progress. Jill carefully lifted the crate, feeling the heft of secrets and danger. "We've got it," he spoke. "We have a safe way out of here." As they approached the exit point that Reed had designated, he stopped and checked his phone, which was flooded with new messages from Falcon and his journalist contacts warning them of possible safe houses and extraction points. "Let's move this before he recovers," Reed said. "Come with me." Revealing the truth. "That was closer than I expected," Melania said, her hands steadying after the adrenaline rush. Jill nodded, her face lit by the gentle illumination of Reed's gadget. "But now that we have the crate, the evidence is in our hands. We must secure this evidence and get it to the right people. Once this crate is out of their control, our job is half done." Reed ensured the crate was safe from tampering by locking it in the vehicle's guarded compartment. "Our next steps are critical. Even if they attempt to suppress one, the truth will still reach the public via other routes because we must spread this proof widely." Reaching the safe house. Jill, Melania, and Reed drove through the quiet streets of Washington, D.C. under the cover of darkness, their hearts racing with realizing what they had done. Safe in their car was the crate containing the damning evidence, a set of files, recordings, and documents that, if they were made public, could shatter the carefully crafted facade of influential people and conspirators working behind the scenes of the inauguration. As the cityscape rolled by in streaks of light, Reed broke the silence. "According to Falcon, we're approaching a safe house, a secure location where we can further process the evidence. Make copies and distribute it to our contacts," Reed said, "if it's off the grid and out of sight." Too far to back down. Melania looked at Jill and said, "We've gone too far to turn back now. While our safety is a priority, our democracy's integrity must come first." After checking her encrypted phone, Jill texted a trusted press contact, saying, "The files will be released. We'll face whatever comes next together. Prepare for confirmation." Reed kept an eye on incoming communications, ensuring their broadcasts reached their intended audience. At the same time, Melania went over the final synopsis of the events they were about to reveal, making sure the story was unambiguous and unquestionable. Spreading the transmission. As the clock struck midnight, Reed nodded quietly, and Evelyn tapped a series of commands on her terminal. Immediately, the evidence was disseminated across several channels, with journalists receiving the files, watchdog groups analyzing them, and secure websites hosting the information. The internet was ablaze with headlines and breaking news alerts as the files were uploaded. The safe house was silent for a moment as they watched the initial reactions on their monitors before news outlets worldwide began reporting the revelations like dominoes falling. Quiet triumph. Jill turned to face Melania, her face displaying a mixture of anxiety and silent triumph. "It's happening," Melania said steadily and with strength. "We succeeded. The truth is spreading. But we have to be on the lookout." The nation's citizens had the opportunity to see behind the scenes for the first time in a long time, but they all knew that their actions tonight would have far-reaching effects that would extend well beyond the inauguration. Influential individuals whose secrets were now public knowledge would rush to limit the damage, which could result in swift and brutal retaliation. Symbol of hope. After the dust settled, the faces of Thomas Reed, Jill Biden, and Melania Trump became symbols of hope, demonstrating that when truth is pursued with unwavering dedication, it can bridge even the widest gaps and lead to profound change. Months later, at a small ceremony honoring whistleblowers and champions of transparency, Jill and Melania stood side by side, two women who had previously been on opposite sides of political discourse, now united in their commitment to a common cause. Their story was not just one of suspense and covert operations, it was a testament to the strength of courage, unity, and the enduring pursuit of truth, one that can change a moment and the world. If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon